The Mirage of Equity, Black Women's Invisible Struggle in Corporate America Despite Diversity Theater. Good afternoon, everyone. I stand before you today humbled and energized after my recent conversation with Cheri Reid, a visionary truth teller whose groundbreaking research has ripped away the comfortable veil we've draped over workplace inequality. Cheri isn't just a researcher or advocate. She is a force of nature who has dedicated her life to exposing the gap between corporate diversity promises and the lived realities of Black women in America's workplaces. Her courage to speak uncomfortable truths in rooms where power resides has literally changed the trajectory of countless careers and organizational cultures. What Cherie shared with me was both illuminating and deeply disturbing. Despite years, decades even, of public commitments to diversity and inclusion, Black women remain the least supported and most under resourced group in corporate America. And here's what should shake us all to our core. Recent policy rollbacks are actively making things worse. Let that sink in for a moment. While many of us have been celebrating superficial progress, patting ourselves on the back for diversity statements and occasional promotions, Black women have been navigating a workplace that continues to undervalue, overlook, and actively harm their career trajectories. This reality directly challenges the comforting narrative many of us have embraced that the doors of opportunity have swung wide open, that progress is steady and irreversible, that time alone will heal historical inequities. As Cheri powerfully articulated during our conversation, the illusion of progress has become one of the greatest obstacles to actual progress. I want to share three critical insights from our conversation that illuminate why this matters, not just for Black women, but for all of us who care about creating truly equitable workplaces. First, allyship is not optional, it is essential. The absence of powerful allies and sponsors represents one of the biggest barriers to Black women's career advancement. A 2025 report from McKinsey and Lenin.org revealed something deeply troubling. Only 25% of Black women had senior allies who advocated for them during high stakes decisions. Think about that. 3 out of 4 Black women navigate their careers without the benefit of senior level advocacy, something research has consistently shown is critical for advancement, particularly into executive roles. This isn't abstract. This is Tanya, who, despite consistently exceeding targets for 3 years, watched as 5 different colleagues, none of them Black women, were promoted above her. When she finally asked her manager why, he said, "You just need to be more visible to leadership." Yet that same manager never invited her to present at executive meetings, never mentioned her contributions in company wide emails, never introduced her to senior leaders at corporate events. Without visible champions advocating for them at critical moments, opportunities for advancement simply don't materialize. As Cheri noted in our interview, allyship without action is just an audience. Second, progress is fragile, frighteningly so. The gains in workplace equity that have been achieved can be quickly reversed by policy shifts or organizational changes. In early 2025, sweeping federal layoffs disproportionately affected roles held by Black women after executive orders dismantled DEI policies. Over 69,000 federal jobs were cut nationwide. Many were positions where equal opportunity mandates previously protected against discrimination. The layoffs led to an immediate spike in unemployment among Black women, increasing 0.5 to 1% monthly, while white women's job security remained stable. This wasn't coincidental. Black women have historically been overrepresented in government roles due to perceived stability and equity protections. When those protections eroded through policy reversals beginning in January 2025, the impact was swift and severe. As Cheri observed, what took decades to build can be dismantled in days when equity is viewed as optional rather than essential. Third, the pay gap remains stark, and its impacts are generational. A July 2025 analysis highlighted pay inequities faced by Black professional women, specifically in New York State. Earning just 66 cents for every dollar paid to white non Hispanic men means lifelong financial disadvantage. In New York alone, totaling more than $1 million in lost income over a typical career span. When we talk about the pay gap, we're not just talking about smaller paychecks. We're talking about diminished retirement savings, reduced ability to purchase homes, limited educational opportunities for children, and constrained options for building generational wealth. As Cheri powerfully stated, the pay gap isn't just about money, it's about time. The time it takes to recover from financial setbacks, the time spent working extra hours to compensate for lower wages, the time stolen from families and communities. The data is clear, but what makes this situation truly unconscionable is that we know what works. Companies with intentional mentorship and sponsorship programs saw better promotion rates among Black female professionals. Where robust allyship existed, more equitable representation at management levels was achieved. Civic organizations launched awareness campaigns like Black Women's Equal Pay Day, demanding legislative action on wage transparency and pay equity enforcement statewide. Rising media coverage pressured employers and policymakers toward incremental reforms around salary disclosure, yet significant gaps persist. The question isn't whether we know how to create more equitable workplaces. The question is whether we have the moral courage to do so. So, where do we go from here? If we truly want to create workplaces where Black women can thrive, we need to move beyond awareness to action. We need to recognize that diversity without inclusion is merely demographic change without cultural change. We need to understand that inclusion without equity is a participation without power. The solutions begin with honest acknowledgement. We must recognize that despite progress in some areas, systemic barriers remain deeply entrenched. We must acknowledge that good intentions without accountability produce limited results. But acknowledgement alone isn't enough. We need concrete actions. Companies must implement robust sponsorship programs that pair Black women with influential leaders who can advocate for their advancement. These relationships must be structured, supported, and measured, not left to chance or personal initiative. Organizations must establish transparent promotion criteria that minimize subjective judgments where bias often creeps in. They must conduct regular pay equity audits and address disparities proactively, not reactively. Leaders must recognize that diversity initiatives aren't peripheral nice to haves, but central to organizational effectiveness. Research consistently shows that diverse teams make better decisions, innovate more effectively, and deliver stronger financial results. And perhaps most importantly, we all must recognize our personal responsibility in this work. Allyship isn't a passive state, it is an active practice. It requires using privilege to create access, sharing power rather than hoarding it, speaking up when inequities emerge, and stepping back when others need space to lead. I want to end with a story that Cheri shared with me that has haunted me ever since. She told me about Maya, a brilliant strategist who spent 12 years at a Fortune 100 company. Maya consistently delivered exceptional results, mentored junior colleagues, and even created an employee resource group that significantly improved retention of women of color. Yet, when a senior leadership position opened, one she was uniquely qualified for, she wasn't even interviewed. When she finally left the company, her exit interview revealed a pattern. Not once in 12 years had a senior leader advocated for her promotion, despite her exemplary performance. Not once had she been invited into the informal networks where real decisions were made. Not once had anyone with power used that power to create opportunity for her. The day after her exit interview, the company posted another statement about their commitment to diversity. This is the reality we must confront, not just with words, but with action, not just with good intentions, but with measurable results. I challenge each of you today. How will you use your influence, not just your words, to become an active sponsor or ally who opens doors rather than simply applauding diversity from afar? What concrete step will you take this week towards supporting a Black woman's leadership journey? Will you have the courage to examine your own organization's promotion patterns? Will you advocate for pay transparency? Will you speak up when you see qualified Black women being overlooked? Will you risk your comfort to create change? Because the truth is this: the barriers facing Black women in corporate America didn't emerge overnight, and they won't disappear without intentional, sustained effort from people with power and privilege. The time for statements has passed. The time for transformative action is now. When we remove artificial barriers to advancement, we don't just change individual careers, we change families, communities, and ultimately the very fabric of our society. We create a world where talent truly thrives regardless of gender, race, or background. That world is possible, but only if we have the courage to build it together. Thank you.